Greetings, boys and babes. It's the Magic Hour, a place where we navigate through life's peaks and valleys with all the vulnerability and shamelessness we can muster. With the help of world-class guests from all walks of life, we uncover new truths and valuable tools for manifesting our highest potential. I'm your host, Mercedes Terrell, along with my partner in shine, Jade Bryce.
Hi, you guys.
Hey, so we are doing things, like I said at the top of the show, we're doing things a little bit differently today. We have opened up this podcast here on Zoom to the attendees in our men's workshop, Awakening the King Within. So they are on live with us today, and we'll have the opportunity to ask our guest questions at the end of this episode. So with that, Jade, tell us about our guest.
Yes. So today we're having on one of my good friends, and he's like a brother to me. We may have very well been siblings in a past life. And Adrian, I met you 8 or 9 years ago, I believe. And it's been, well, we were completely different people then. You were mid-30s, I was mid-20s. And it has been an extreme honor to watch you on your journey to awakening the king within. And I've always known you to be someone who cares about others. Always known you as someone who is very vulnerable and intimate in their connection with others. Always known you to be someone who's a truth teller and a truth seeker as a humanitarian and I guess you have always been really passionate about, economical issues and things like that. So I've always known you to have this huge heart. You've always been all of these things, and you've always made the world a better place, including my world.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll take it.
When I first met you, you didn't really believe in, falling in love or in monogamy, things that are in your life now. And although you were so much a lover, I know that, and this was the same for me, we were very much in our shadow lover when it comes to the archetypes. Mm-hmm. And you were still, though, somewhat trying to answer, just like I was, and we still are, the question of who am I? And even though when I would be around you, I would see you living with such an open heart, as if you could hug the whole room or the whole party all at once. There was still, like, I think in both of our eyes, I could see in yours, like a longing for something more, or maybe like a bit of fear or sadness, because there was still this like void that we were trying to fill. Fast forward to today, there is a new sense of groundedness and centeredness and calmness. And I know I've told you this before, there's a strong sense of inner knowing and inner peace without the need of constant exterior pleasure. There's this ability to be alone with ourselves as well. But mostly what I see in your eyes is now a man who is solid, who's ruled by love, and who has an unwavering sense of who he is and what he's here for. And I have loved getting to know you over and over again over these years. And I'm so excited for our men's workshop and for our podcast listeners to get to know you as well. So with that, welcome to the show.
I liked that love bomb. That was pretty cool to witness over here if you're on video watching this with us.
And by the way, we haven't seen each other in a very long time. So this is,
I think, pre-COVID.
This is a great excuse to finally hang out.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. Magic Hour is bringing everyone together. I like it. It's what we need after COVID for sure. So I want to ask you to kind of take us back into your journey and maybe think back on your life leading up to now. Like, what are the moments that stand out to you, perhaps both good or bad, high and low, that directed you along your journey?
First of all, how many people are in here right now? I just wanted to say hello to all of you. I can't see you, but just want to acknowledge that you're here. Hello.
So awesome that they showed up.
Yeah. Of course you would. This is an incredible duo here.
Oh, thanks.
So much wisdom coming out of here. There's a lot. I mean, from her introduction, the question, it just feels very broad. I don't really know where to begin. All I know is that at this point in my life, so many things have changed, and I imagine everybody here has gone through a lot of changes. The whole world has, and I'm really, really, really happy that those changes have come about, because I feel like I'm in a much more grounded place. I'm certainly my perspective on the world, my spiritual orientation has expanded to include a longer timeline instead of just self-centered or me-centered or moment-to-moment indulgent centered. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And that journey was very hard, arduous, painful. And I'm just really happy to be in this moment, having had all that experience behind me. And now I get to take what I've learned, what I've manifested, what I've come to embody, and then start to walk along the new path, oriented now to what I think is a higher order of purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Jade mentioned in the bio or the intro she brought up for you was that there was this phase that she kind of witnessed you going through where it was a lot about pleasure seeking and escapism. And I wonder if you can maybe bring to mind any of those instances where you were like sat back and were like, what the hell am I doing? You know, like, where are we at, Adrian? Where do we want to go? And you actually got a chance to glimpse that reality. Like, hey, have I just been running from really myself my entire life?
Yeah. Certainly was, I think it was born of a nihilism, a godlessness, growing up in New York City without a sense of a higher sort of sense of God or collective in me. It was more ego, and so intellectual. And so, they say if God is dead, then we'll create our own, we'll become our own. So in many ways, I had to step into that role. And so for me, my intellect, my ability to outwit, outsmart, or get over on somebody was a survival method, but also a way of grounding myself in some sort of order. And in that, I was, a lot of it self-involved, self-centered in my objectives. Jade mentioned that I guess you viewed me as being loving and caring about others. And that's true, but my care for others stopped where my ego began. Because if it was between me and you, if it was a win-win, great. But if it was between me and you, it was always going to be me. Mm-hmm. So I hadn't learned the ability to sacrifice or to forego my own indulgences for the sake of others. And that really is, if I imagine a lot of people here are familiar sort of with the different archetypes, but that's really the Prince sort of immaturity that I was embodying. And now that I've stepped into a more mature stage of my life, I really look to give of myself in service to others to the extent where I will forego my own needs, my own pleasure, my own comfort, and be able to withstand withstand the discomfort enough until I can, take care of myself again. But that really, and it's not that I'm doing it out of some martyrdom. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, look at me, I'm like giving myself over. It's like, no, I want to do it because I see the value and the benefit of serving the world, serving others, so that as we are reborn over and over, we begin to come into a world that we have created that is better than the one before. So I really do believe that my life's goal is to cultivate, create, build, give, serve a better world that only I can actually create if I give of myself in those ways.
I'm curious, because most people listening probably do know you from Entourage. And I've wondered this about a bunch of actors that were really good playing the role. First of all, when I met you, I had not seen Entourage. I had only seen Devil Wears Prada. And I remember when I watched that in the theater, seeing your character and feeling like I knew you already and think like you looked so familiar to me. And I had no idea we'd have a future and probably had a past together. So it's funny, but like take Monica from Friends. Like she plays that role so well. And then when you meet her in person, I remember being at her house one time and being like, she's basically Monica in real life. And it made me wonder, did she play the role so well that she then became Monica in real life? Or because she played it for so long, or was she so already Monica that that's what she brought to the character? And that she just, you know, that's basically how the character was based around. So I wonder for Entourage, because it was so much of who you were then as well, somewhat, I'm curious if you became that role in your daily life, or if you just played that role so well and that's what you brought to the character.
It's the age-old question: does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? And I'd say it's both. It's a symbiotic exchange between what we imagine, what we fake till we make, and then what we make affects us as well, and then we become it. I mean, I remember. I mean, you know, when you're like in 8th grade and you are going into high school, or you're making some big change where you don't know anybody, and suddenly you're like, now I can be who I really want to be, or I can change my identity because I don't have to continue to, you know, represent this authentic self that everybody sees me at, but now I can actually experiment and try. You know, I mean, I changed my clothes out. You know, I used to wear, my mom used to dress me, I mean, until like 9th grade, you know, so I would wear matching mustard yellow sweater and socks from the Gap. And when I first got into high school, I was like, oh yeah, this is not going to work. So for the first time, I started to experiment with who I would choose to be through dress, through swagger, whatever. And was I really cool? No, I wasn't. I was just trying it on for the first time. But I guarantee you, by the end of high school, I was real cool because I just, you know, conditioned myself to be my new self. So we reinvent ourselves all the time. I mean, life is a creative process. We are constantly in a state of becoming anew. So I give myself permission to take ownership of what I create and who I am. And that's part of taking responsibility for who you are and what you do. But, you know, I remember there was a time I was reading, you know, all the beatniks, and had a fancy for the idea of jazz music, smoking cigarettes, playing chess, and being in like little dive bars. And it was all new for me. It was just an idea from books I'd read. And I was like, well, I want to be that. And so I didn't know how to play chess. I didn't smoke cigarettes. I didn't like jazz. Whiskey was kind of, you know, didn't taste great. But, you know, I went in, I learned chess. I started like smoking cigarettes, and I became that archetype, you know, the smoking, drinking, chess playing jazz dude. And I started to actually enjoy jazz and the complexity, and oh, that was weird. Like, what was that off note? So all that saying that I have reinvented myself over and over again to embody ideas of myself. Now, these are characters in many ways, right? And so to Entourage, in many ways, like we are asked as actors to portray a character. So we study the character and we imagine what the character is, and then we borrow from parts of ourselves to, you know, put into that role. But we all have all of it in us. You know, we have all of the roles, all of the personality types, all of masculine, feminine, you know, good guy, bad guy, all of the things. And it's just, can you as an actor allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to be something that you're not authentically? Because I think on some level, at least socially, we have a desire to be authentic, or at least to seem genuine. You know, there's some, I'm sure, evolutionary reasons for that. Trust, you know, you want to, convey trust to other people so that they invite you in and trust you. But if you're always changing and you're kind of shifty and not exactly grounded in an identity, people don't trust you because there's nothing to expect. So there's, on some level, we want to convey that. But as actors, we have to be willing to go into the unknown of who we are, which is also a very uncomfortable and very disconcerting experience, because who are you? You're like, you could be anything and you don't even know yourself. And the only way you know if you get validation is if people applaud you, but then you don't know if you really believe them because they could just be saying that. And then also you have to like trust a director to tell you, did I do good? And then if the director's not that great, what do you so it's a disconcerting experience to constantly be foregoing yourself for these aspects of yourself. So yes, I mean, Vince is a part of me. Vince came from a very real aspect of my personality. And then once the character,
I was just interested if you would say that you were kind of also living offset as that character, or that, that you're wearing that mask essentially for a time in your life, or did the other parts of you peek out often?
Well, once the character was established, especially globally, suddenly I was validated in every room I walked into because they liked the character. So am I more likely to try and be authentically me, who no one knows, who's like kind of like weird and awkward and wants to play chess? Or am I going to be the Vince character and then get all the approval of all the rooms of everywhere? So, you're sort of, you're
almost like, you're funneled, you're channeled to stay in that identity in a way.
Right. And then as a celebrity, you get further reward, further dopamine with attention, sex, alcohol, drug, like whatever you want, it's like always there. So the pleasure seeking me, who wanted comfort, wanted mommy, wanted to like be safe, didn't want to have to stand up on my own and do anything hard, wanted to always be comforted and coddled, was like, hell yeah, man, let's go. Like,
that makes total sense. And I think even, for the rest of the world, I think we can relate so much because we are all kind of acting or wearing a mask to some degree or another. And it is because of our conditioning, of course. And then we go out and we get praised for identifying a certain way. So we go, okay, well, that worked. I'm safe in that identity, safe in the meaning of people aren't ousting me, I'm allowed to be part of the tribe if I keep this identity. My parents accept me, my friends accept me here, so I'm going to just stay in this lane. And we never get to break through into the full spectrum humans we really were born to be here to experience through. And I would love to know, how your journey of like what we're calling awakening the king within, but your journey of making that transition. So like your transition from going from where you were wearing that mask and you were really kind of ingrained in that character or that part of you, that part of your psyche, really, right? And began to kind of realize, wait, is there more here? Like something is missing here. Where did that start popping up, bubbling up for you?
Yeah, well, I think that we instinctively, naturally leverage these transition mechanisms, these transition points, like from junior high to high school, for example, move to a new state, change your identity. It's a lot easier when the external world does it for you. It's like everything's so different anyway, you can sort of slip in and try something new. It's doing a lot of you go with the inertia, the momentum of that.
Like with COVID. Yeah, that's happening.
Exactly. So that's why, you hit rock bottom, right? So our evolutionary trajectory is always the same. It's like break down, break apart, reconfigure, decompose, then grow new life. so I had a breakdown. I had a crash that I sensed coming. I intuited it over the years. I mean, it happened a lot later than I thought. Like I got a really good run of that other guy, that other character that I was playing. But ultimately it did come, and I just knew that I had to completely change my whole entire worldview, my routines, my reason for being. I had to reorient myself in a direction that was spiritually aligned to something bigger than myself. Get out of my ego, get out of my head and into my heart, and mostly into my body.
Yeah.
I had to come back to earth, come back into my physical experience, not
that. So that sounds super esoteric for someone who's not, been in this work of somatic therapy and such. Can you kind of describe what that means for you? Like why coming back into our body and grounding ourselves that way is so incredibly important?
Yeah. And I didn't know that that's what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
I had a psychic. My breakdown was a breakup with my ex-girlfriend, who had the perspective on me enough to know that I was headed in the wrong direction. And she wanted more of me. And she said, you're playing small. It's painful to watch. It hurts me, and you suck. So she dumped my ass. And I was so deluded. I was so in my own fantasy of myself that I thought she was absolutely out of her mind. Like I was able to rationalize, like, this bitch is crazy. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're gonna give this up? Really? Like, I have it all. Like, I'm Vince. and she was like, exactly. So she dumped me and like gave me enough perspective on myself where I was like, oh, there's got to be something here. If this person that I love, that I thought I'd be with, and who I respect, says that about me. So she gave me a list of things to look at, and I was like, okay, honey, like I'll look at it. But it's probably, this seems crazy.
Such a woman thing to do, giving a written list.
so grateful for that. It was so convenient. It was like, here's all the things you got to do. Like, oh shit. So I like went through one by one. And the first thing that I really had to do was basically take out all of the things that were in my routine. I had to change my routine, strip everything away, and just be, to really recognize how I was using each of those things, how I was using sex, how I was using alcohol, how I was using business, work, all of the things, fame, stuff, materialism. And strip it away, start from scratch, and then like start to assess. And just in doing that, it was like, oh my God, like I had all these feelings, all this agitation. And I just wanted to grab at all these distractions and these indulgences to numb and to escape in all of those things. And so that began my journey of getting out of the distractions and the numbness of the escape and into my feeling self again, which I guess from my assessment, I had been essentially out of my body for 30 years at least, just deciding to seek not feeling.
Escaping and numbing out. This is such a common thing for humans to do, especially, men. We see it a lot in male culture, just because our society tells us men aren't allowed to feel in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And I think, so an intuitive of mine that I see regularly said something about how men truly do wake up when a very powerful woman breaks up with them, or when they have to go without sex for a period of time, because that's when they feel their feelings more. And so that power of a woman to like shake a man awake, and how women can be so conditioned to accept the bare minimum from a man or the worst from a man.
Mhm.
And Jordan wasn't willing to do that. She wanted your full expression. She wanted your full self. And I loved watching that dynamic happen, because it also made me feel empowered to accept more as well, and to call a man forward to wake, his evolution, and to fully waking up.
Yeah. I mean, there's a codependency collectively between toxic masculinity and women that accept that. That's why where we're at in society is so powerful with Me Too, as sort of, the sort of crude expression of hell no more, we want better. And now women who are recognizing that they need to expect more and not indulge because they feel like they can't get any better and they're a little bit scared that they're going to end up alone their whole life, so they accept bad behavior in men. But that women are saying, no, we want more, and they hold that standard for themselves and the world. And I really do believe women are the oracles. They're the ones who are seeing what the world needs, and then us men are tasked to help build it. But we are taking our cues from women. And if women are allowing us to be, small boys or like immature or uninitiated, we'll stay like that. I mean, I'll cuddle with mommy all day long as I don't have to do any hard work. But it's not until women expect more of us, and then we step into that responsibility and create the structure that we need to build that world.
Yeah. Some men though would feel too tested by that, or too nagged by that. So I'm curious. I feel also that maybe the men who can't trust their woman to be their oracle is because they don't trust their own inner feminine, or they still have a mother wound. So can you speak on that, maybe how that may have been a part of it for you, and how maybe that came folding together, you being able to trust your own feminine and work on your own mother or father wounds that allowed you to let Jordan be your oracle? Because some men don't allow that.
I think, this shit is deep. It is deep. I would say maybe the opposite.
Okay.
It's that I trusted my feminine too much. I didn't trust my masculine. I didn't actually have healthy, strong masculine role models. And by the way, neither did my mom. And by the way, neither does anybody I know. For generations, men have been showing up less and less. And
I know your mom showed up as both for you.
She tried. She did. Yes. And so I would say that my mom did not have that healthy dynamic with men. So she compensated the best she could. And then through subconscious means and through conditioning, having been raised by her, I didn't learn to entirely, I didn't grow up. I didn't learn the masculine part of me, which I needed to. And also because my mother was on her own, she was left to her own devices, and her instinct is to just coddle and hold me and like protect me. So despite her best efforts to try and be that disciplinarian masculine energy, I got away with everything anyway. Like, God bless her. I knew how to, through the codependence of a mom and a child, like I knew how to trigger her mother instinct to coddle me and to protect me and to do the thing. She didn't do my laundry, but, do my dirty work at times. And so I think it wasn't that I was in touch with my mother. I was like, I wasn't, birds leave the nest at a certain point, and it's not that I was living at home with my mom, but I was still living at home with my mom. So it's, I don't know. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. So I loved that you allowed that. You're still obviously called Jordan in because it was asking for that from you as well. And I love that you recognize that, because I know you have to be on a certain place in your own journey in order to allow your woman to be an oracle. Otherwise, it's just constantly resisted and treated as like, oh, the woman's testing you too much. Or and I feel that women, we can't not test you when we truly love you, because we want the best of you. We want you to rise to your, there's no way that we can just sit and not call you to your best self.
Well, and I think,
if we truly love you.
I think that's what's part of stepping into your true fortitude as a man, or this is speaking for myself, obviously, is when a woman tests you, when she pokes you, when she's, making sure that you're up to snuff for her, is your reaction what's the energy of your reaction? Is it defensive? Do you feel nagged? Do you feel like the little boy where you're like, oh, I gotta like listen to the old ball and chain, or, mom, I don't wanna, is it that energy? Or is there something else at play? And I recognize that the energy I was coming from for many years was like, I'd roll my eyes and try and get away with something. If there was a rule, I'd try and break it because I was this, rebel, this, immature, little, punk that wanted to get away with everything. And I thought that if I got away with it, no one knew. Like, it's like getting away with having stolen the cookies from the cookie jar. But then at a certain point, you're just like that, I had to change my worldview and say, do I want to live my whole life until I die just the same old indulgences and pleasure seeking, and then I've left behind what? Or do I want to actually create something of meaning and
really claim your life? Yeah. I mean, instead of letting it just prod you and poke you along and you get away with things. Yeah. It doesn't feel integral even when you say those words. Like I can feel it as you say it. And I think that idea of being able to get back in your body and actually start feeling is really, I mean, that's really what you're speaking to there. When you could sit back in, or what I'm hearing from you is when you could sit back in your body and just like go, how is this emotion coming through me whenever my woman is testing me, or whenever something hard comes up in life? What's actually happening inside my body? Like, what are the feelings I'm feeling? Is it tightness in my stomach, whatever it is? And how does that come out of me? Is it like a little boy is throwing a tantrum because he's not getting his way? Where is the power that you're flexing actually coming from? Is it a conscious place, or is it a place of, I just want to get my way and I want things to be this way because it's easiest for me?
An inner child or an inner king.
Yeah.
I want to talk too about, so you and I both did a celibacy period at the same time. I did like a straight 9 months. I think you did 2 series of 3 months, if I'm remembering correctly. And I want to talk about what that experience was like for you, and how I remember you telling me in the midst of it that you were actually like feeling orgasms in your heart. Like you were brought, I don't know if you remember that, or if you remember going through that, but it actually brought you more into your body, those periods of celibacy. So I want to talk about why you intentionally chose to have a celibacy when sex was very easy for you to come by. And so that, and then also how it brought you more into your body. I know that you did some work with, I don't know if it would be called a sex healer or an intuitive healer, but.
I mean, in many ways, a somatic healer as well. Well, as I mentioned before, I was sort of looking at the role that these different elements played in my life, sex being a huge part of my life, love it. It's great. And a huge addiction and indulgence. And so the question was, am I addicted to sex? I'm like, well, I really like it and I want it all the time. Is that addiction? Well, that's not the addiction. The addiction is how you use it. Are you using it to shut down, turn off, and numb, or are you using it to increase sensation and connect more? I had to I had to see, I was like, okay, let me take this off the table and see what else is going on. And that's why meditation is so important, because you're turning off the natural inclination to be distracted by thoughts so that you can come to a more pure, mindful, observation of yourself, right? The what's the word?
Perspective.
Yeah, different perspective. And then also in the body, like, how can I stop indulging in all these physical escapes to try and see what's happening in my body, what's going on. And and so it was fucking challenging. I mean, really hard, because I'd been using sex, masturbation to, I mean, like, oh, I can't sleep, so, go masturbate. And then like the endorphins and then kick in and you're just like numbed out. And so now I had all this chi, all this energy that I had to deal with. It was like in me, it wasn't being released. So I had to contend with that, all that energy and emotion, and my body just wanting to like grasp back into old patterns. And
or find another way to numb out, maybe.
Yeah. Like any number of ways, going on Instagram or something, and can I continue to just remain present, come back to presence, come back to now, come back to what's going on in my body, feeling it, all the feels, and endure that, right? And if you're reconditioning yourself, if you're changing patterns, because certain patterns have been etched so strongly over years of just, habits, to change those patterns is hard, and then to write new ones. But it's possible, but first you have to stop with the old patterns, and then now start to use that energy, cultivate all of that chi, and place it into new patterns that reflect your new vision for the world, your new ideology, your new purpose. And it was a multi-year process, and painful. And speaking of Alana Mehta was the guide, the coach who helped me sort of structure my celibacy, and held me accountable. And she also, really helped me find and connect into some of the childhood trauma that I had, which started my inclination to escape, because being in my body, my feeling body, was just too painful.
Yeah.
And so I would just find ways to get out of my body, get out of my feeling. And so once she was able to guide me to reconnect with those childhood traumas and feel the pain of that, and then move through that pain now as an adult, it totally reconditioned myself. And I remember we were doing an exercise, and an incredible force, incredible magician. She essentially embodied a figure in my childhood who had hurt me. And I mean, it was, talk about role play, and talk about performance, talk about make believe. Like this was her, her specific skill to be able to channel that energy of that figure in my life to make me believe in this adult moment that it was happening to me. And then to trust her enough that I was safe enough to like witness that experience. And then even though like my whole body went numb and I was entirely,
it's like you went back to that exact moment.
The exact moment of trauma. And I had utter fear, and I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. And then she asked me, because there was, I'm witnessing myself, but I'm also in it, in the experience from the past. And then she asked me on like a third state of awareness, what are you going to do? And then I had that moment of empowerment where I got to make a new choice. And instead of retreating, freezing, escaping, I got to push through that experience, push through the feeling, and be present and stand up for myself. And from that state, from that point on, I was again in my body. Now I had feelings that were numb for however long. And why that's important is not because I was able to push through that inner trauma, but because now I'm in my body and I have a whole set of feelings and sensations that I get to use to act upon the world, to receive information, and then to make decisions. So a lot of times, we get distracted by the visual, or at least men do, right? I do, or the things that are readily available. And so we're always gathering information and synthesizing it in order to make decisions, to, make sense of the world. But if I'm offline, all down here, there's all this information that I'm leaving on the table. So now, being in my body, suddenly my intuition started to come alive again. And I started to be able to sense things in advance. So whenever I'm about to make a decision, a shitty decision that I've been used to making for, all those years before, suddenly my intuition was like, what are you doing? Does that feel right? Are you sure you should do that? And I'd be like, what is this? What is this? Shut up. Yeah. Okay. No, fine. Tell me more. And I was able to then start to make decisions that were beyond just escape, but were for my, better self and for others.
Yeah.
I was able to sense other people when they would come into my sphere, because trauma attracts trauma. So my trauma was always attracting others who had the similar reciprocal trauma. So there's a codependency there. And so when people would come into my sphere, and as a celebrity, there's a lot of people coming in my sphere, instead of just like hovering above it and being like, whatever, I'll just, hope everything goes well, I would sense, I was like, there's something off about this person. There's something that they're seeking in me that is not healthy. And instead of indulging that and indulging their trauma and then contributing more, I was able to step into the appropriate role for that person. It's like, oh, this chick, doesn't want me to flirt with her. She doesn't want me to try and sleep with her. She actually wants me to protect her and love her. And so now I am able to serve her appropriately as an adult man, as a protector, as opposed to the little boy who's just like, yeah, I'll, just indulge all the badness.
Yeah. Thank you for being so open, because I know a lot of men don't talk about their sexual trauma. A lot of men don't actually remember their sexual trauma. And I didn't realize that we had Stefanos on last week and talked about how the number is much higher than it, you would read online.
The number of men that have had
sexual trauma. Yeah, we hear a lot about women's sexual trauma. We don't hear a lot about men's. And I know, I love that you were able to reach that place and like rewire your brain with that trauma and respond, kind of like Peter Levine talks about. I think you pronounce it Levine, with Waking the Tiger. Like the animal shakes it off, and how you probably were in this fight, flight, or freeze up until that moment where you were able to go there again and shake that trauma off. And I know for me, when I relived it, my sexual trauma, I did, it was on ayahuasca at first, where it came back up and I had oh, wow, this went much further than I realized. And then I revisited it again on MDMA with a trauma expert, and my whole body trembled for so long. And when I revisited it and I saw that I had blacked out the actual rape, when I was able to go back to it, I was able to tell myself, you're safe. We're going to overcome this and stay in my body. And my pleasure, my sexual pleasure after that, I won't say that I didn't have sexual deep connection prior, but there was always this feeling of not being fully there. and pleasure was harder for me to reach. After going through that sexual healing work, I felt fully in my body, and my orgasms were a lot quicker, a lot stronger. And I was able to just, to simply put it, be more in my body. Was that your experience as well? That then when your celibacy was through and you then were intimate with a woman, was it much different?
Well, I mean, it was different in that, you know, I went from being polyamorous to monogamous.
Yeah. Was that part of it too?
I mean,
Being celibate? Because I know during your celibacy, I remember you telling me that you were ready for your queen. But like our talks prior, you know, when I was in my, 8-9 years ago, you always had multiple, partners.
I was enjoying myself.
Yeah.
Yes.
But towards the end of your celibacy, you were like really ready to have your queen. So was that also a part of the celibacy? Was like that shift in you?
Well, I'm still a very open person. I just don't know if the practical function of polyamory is quite appropriate for me, and I don't even know for society at large, especially the way in which people are indulging that idea. Not that it's not possible. I just don't know if I'm ready for it right now. Like as an ideal, yeah, I think, you know, one day, maybe in the future, but I do recognize now that there is an aspect of commitment to myself, to my partner. And ultimately, why do we have partners? To create life, to build a family, to have children, and then create a safe space for those children to come into the world and grow up so that they perchance don't have the same exposure to the traumas that we did, right? So my goal right now is to create that haven, that sanctuary to, you know, have a family. And when you're juggling all of these energies from all these different people with all their traumas and all the various degrees of work or not work that they've done, the variables just increase and it just becomes a little bit more challenging. Not that it's not possible, but more challenging than I really care to embrace, because I have so much work to do outside of the relationship, still with myself. I'm still becoming the man that I want to be. I still have a fuckload of skills I still need to learn, which I failed to do throughout my whole life because I was too busy clubbing or something. I don't know. I just bought land, so I need to learn how to steward the land and, grow food and build the community and all of the skills that I need to learn so that when my children do come into the world, I don't have to play catch up to teach them how to be the man. They see it witnessed in the way I embody myself and how I practice. So I have to build up to have the skill set to be the example for my children so that I don't even have to teach. I can just be.
Yeah. And that's truly, building a legacy as a king in the way we put it, here on the show, because it's about integration. It's about becoming an integral man. We talk about the workshop and what we're helping men to do. And it's such a beautiful, one of the first guests we actually had on this podcast said something to me that for some reason it finally clicked, was that each time, the next generation has a child, they basically, like our mothers, for instance, are the platform that we got to rise from. And so then we create the foundation and the platform that our children get to rise from. And you have to hope that it's better than the one previous, because that's what we're doing, is building incrementally on one another. And that is, the trajectory, all the trajectory you can hope for is to make it better than the last, right? And you brought up, that you bought land and you are now learning how to steward it and even create a community on it. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was how important community is generally, especially when you're on your growth path, like you have been, and you probably will be on for the rest of your life, I would assume at this point. But, the people listening to this podcast or listening to the Magic Hour generally are likely on their growth path. They're seeking, they're attempting to be better humans. And of course, the men in this workshop are obviously very actively on their growth path. So just would love to speak to how important community has been in creating accountability and holding you as you have traveled through this next phase of your life.
Well, I think a couple of things that make us unique as humans are, one, to be creative, to reinvent ourselves, to recognize that power and that ability is important. And also our ability to collaborate successfully. That's another thing that's made us as a species so successful, is being able to work together. So first, having that creative vision of what we want to build, what we want to create, how the world ought to be, and then collaborating together to make it so, to bring it to life. So yeah, I now have changed my worldview and my vision for the world and want to build it. I can only do so much myself, but together, we can really get something done. So now is the time to connect with like-minded humans. And it's such a relief to see so many lights coming on throughout the world, and people starting to connect into a shared collaborative vision that is not naively egalitarian, everybody equal type thing, but everybody unique in their contribution to a complex, dynamic ecosystem of humans creating a better society. And yeah, and it's possible. And if we look around the world, and all the systems that we have created previously need to change. And I would just push back a little on what you said, because you said we're building on top of. I don't see it that way. I think the linear mechanical world that we've believed is the way things are for so long have allowed us to create these exploitative systems that end in landfills, or end in discarding of people, resources, things. Whereas I think we need to have more of a system that embraces and transmutes energy and creates like this dynamic collaborative ecosystem that's shared, that's not on top of or building. We're not standing on the shoulders of giants. We are literally growing from within the giants. We are the giants. And so, yeah, just a different visual for me is more in sort of the permaculture, compost, garden sort of vision. I'm in love with my compost, and I see like my banana peels, my scraps. We're not building on top of them. They're actually becoming the rich, fertile soil that will set, sort of the conditions for future life.
So it's an evolution or an expansion.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. Yeah. When we get into that linear mindset, it becomes the capitalist mindset, it becomes something that could be just.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just rhetoric, but rhetoric is important also.
Yeah.
Sure.
And when I think of you and community, I think of that. I think about how you would make your backyard a community garden. You're very, I think of that and of the sweetness of that, but I also think of how you sought out men's groups, and you've gone on men's trips where you guys do deep work. And that took a lot of, first of all, and not to harp on men, but it can be very hard for a man to seek out help from another man, to seek out direction. You know, there's the funny stories of not wanting to pull over for directions before we had the iPhones, you know? So I also think of that and the importance of that in your life, men's work and men's groups.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I was an only child. I craved connection. I felt lonely. I wanted community, but I was seeking out community members that were indulging in the same misbehaving that I was. And when I changed what I wanted for myself in the world, I had to change who my friends are. And so I started to seek those that wouldn't make me feel bad, that wouldn't belittle me, that wouldn't, like, you know, compete with me for some zero-sum game, that weren't inept and emasculated and weak, so that I felt safe, that weren't destructive in certain ways, and men that were like leveling up. And you know, I had to like step up my game in order to be in their company. And also, when I asked for help, they were there for me, not in like an ego way, but in a genuinely heart-centered way, where they want me. They want the best of me because they need me as much as I need them, so that we can work together. And if anybody's not operating at their highest potential, then they're a liability. And, you know, me too, right? Like, I suddenly recognized that I need those men. I need them. And they're not above me because they need me. So the tension of those relationships elevate the group.
Yeah. That really hits home, because it feels like for a lot of people, and I know for myself, it's that worthiness when that comes up, like to say that they need me too, and really feel that that is truth.
And I have something to offer them, just like they have something to offer me. Yeah,
exactly. It's a mutually beneficial relationship where we need each other, and it's symbiotic and synergistic, you know, like we can, like together we create something way better than we could alone.
It increases the stakes.
Yeah.
And my partner is in a men's group called the Iron Container at Third Eye Meditation Lounge over at Casa de Luz. I know you're familiar with, but I know they cry together, and they hold each other in a safe container to express all of their shit, you know, and they also hold each other accountable and call each other on their shit. And I know there's many times that he leaves there and he says that he's on cloud 9 and that he wishes all men could experience this. And that's something I can't give him. That's something that he can only get in that specific container with other men. There's also things he can't give me if he didn't have that. And so it's so valuable.
Yeah. And not to say that there aren't men who live more in their feminine, you know, women who live more in their masculine, but there's a masculine energy that, you know, men are predisposed to have, that, you know, requires, you know, they say iron sharpens iron, and to have that pushback and have that energy and to feel safe in them and their intention for you. I mean, yeah, we cry a fuckload, and we reveal all of the shadows, you know, and it's horrifying to be vulnerable in that way. But also when you see them being the same way, you're like, wow, like that that's like me. That's what I have. Like, there's so much familiarity because we're all just iterations on the same thing as humans. Like, it's just.
And I know another big part for him was when he saw other men doing the work, it made it more attainable for him.
Yeah. Highly recommend men's groups. Very important. And hopefully, you know, I think there will be more and more opportunities for men to get connected with those kinds of men's groups. I mean, we have outsourced that need for camaraderie and community in like sports or wrestling or something like WWF. But there is a type of male bonding that can be spiritually aligned, heart-centered, loving, and also tough as nails. And, you know, definitely strong. And
yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because I think a lot, you know, some men listening going, I don't want to go join a group where I'm going to cry all day. That sounds terrifying and terrible, you know, like that doesn't sound like fun. And it is a small piece of what happens in those groups. But the point you brought up, Adrian, is like, this is a place where no matter however you decide to express in it, you feel safe enough there because you know the intention behind it, and you know the intention of the men that are holding that space. And that in itself is like incredibly healing, even just being able to speak something that you maybe wouldn't have said to anyone else and let it be held by a group of men who get you and who have positive and high intentions for you.
That's right.
Can be so incredibly powerful. And before we move on, I want to just let our guys in our Awakening the King Within workshop know that we are taking questions at the end of this in just a few minutes here. So if you click on the little Q&A button somewhere on your Zoom screen, you can enter your question there. You can enter it either anonymously or under your name. And any questions you have for Adrian, we will answer in just a few minutes when we open up the Q&A session. So please add those now. Yeah. All right, Jay, do you want to move us on?
Yeah. So I want to share like just a little story, and then we can see where it goes. But there was a time that you were a date of mine to the wedding, and that night is so memorable for me because I apologized like 20 something times to you about, I apologize we had to park too far from the venue. I apologize it was so crowded. I apologize that they served you your water in plastic. I apologize that your ankle was broken. People were wanting pictures with you. I felt like, or as far as I remember, I was apologizing. And you stopped me at one point. You took my arm and you said, I'm enjoying myself with you. Don't like stop apologizing. And you asked me straight up right then, like, why do you feel the need to apologize so much? And it hit like, that was such a touching moment because I felt that unworthiness wound, like open. I apologize just for taking up space, just for, I had to apologize that you were even with me somewhere, you know? And that was so big so David Data talks about how men grow by challenge, but women grow by praise. And how if you praise your woman freely,
good to know,
freely 5 times a day, how much you will see her grow, and how healing that is for her worthiness wound. So I know
you are so smart.
Thank you.
You're so incredibly smart.
You just like now,
that praise is happening right here. You see that?
4 more times, Adrian. But you've always spoken to my queen. You've always spoken to my queen, which has called her forth. And it's one of the reasons why I feel so good in your presence. But I want to talk about that, about how that is a form of men leveling up, being willing to speak praise, because we live in a punishing culture. We think if we praise, they won't try as hard, or if we praise, then they've won. So I want to speak on that a little bit, because you have always done that for me.
I'm glad, and you deserve it. You are absolutely incredible, intelligent, beautiful, one of my closest friends. So you deserve it, you know, and otherwise, you know, why would I be hanging out with you? Like I want to surround myself with people that are worthy of my presence, and you are. And so that requires that we both have to keep the standard high for each other. I think, you know, a lot of times in this culture, you know, we're taught to belittle or to, you know, put down.
It's a shadow king energy.
Right. To dominate, to control. But what happens when you build up and make the other powerful? Suddenly now you have to also. So there's a weakness, there's a laziness.
If you stay small, I can stay small.
Right.
That hits home, Adrian.
Right. And so I would surround myself with small people, so that I didn't have to do any work. It was easy for me. And what a waste of time. I mean, I could feel bad about not having leveled up sooner, because I did waste a good 20 years at least. But we are infinite, and it's never too late, and now's a perfect time. So,
and I just want to ask, as a caveat to that, is it like, even when we spend a lot of time alone, it gets to a place where we're not in community on purpose, like you're saying? It's like almost an extended version of that, where we're not only are we not surrounding ourselves with high, growth mindseted people, however you want to put that, right? Like people who are going to push us to our highest, so that we don't have to worry about taking on that responsibility of stepping into our highest selves. But we're also just not even, like, we're doing it so deeply that we're just not even fucking with other people at all. Like, we just don't even want to look in the mirror at all and see where we haven't grown.
Yeah, because also with any knowledge, there's the call to change. Like when Seaspiracy came out, I kept feeling resistance to watch it because I didn't want to not eat sushi anymore. And I knew if I watched it, I was going to be called to level up,
Yes. That's so true. Yeah. Just like little nuanced things like that as well. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you wanted to bring up on that before we move on to our little staples questions? Jade?
We have our lightning round of questions that we ask everybody on the show that I'm sure you're familiar with. And then we'll open up to the workshop, see if they have any questions for you.
By the way, can I just, hold on. That picture is so nice. I feel like we're in some.
Now we're in your backyard.
This is some photo.
That's funny.
I like it. Awkward family photos. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Awkward family photos.
Okay, Adrian. So like we said, there's a few short questions we ask everyone who comes on the show. I know you know, because you've listened to our show. And thank you, by the way, for all the praise you've given us. And thank you for sending me those cleaning supplies, which I've never gotten to tell you. So from your company.
Yeah. Shout out to Blue Land.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question we ask is, if you could hug your younger self right now, what would you say?
Yeah. I'd say thank you for all the wisdom. I stay connected to my inner child because he has so much to offer me. He sends me messages through time and space to land in my adult moments. And I'm like, I always have to remember that there's messages coming. He's like, be a better man, be better than your dad, be better than my dad. And I'm like, okay, got it.
I love that. Yeah.
If you could have the whole world read one book, which would it be? It's a hard one.
Oh. Well, I'll just say that I'm reading a great book right now by Jamie Wheel, Recapture the Rapture. Have you read it?
Well, I've gotten it, but I haven't started it.
It's really good.
It's the sex magic book. Is it?
I haven't gotten to that part yet,
okay.
But it's really good. He's a great writer, and it's really compelling. And I think it's a handbook to, level up for the future, for a better future too. So it's right on topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jamie was really incredible. Okay. If you could whisper one phrase to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
If I could whisper
one phrase to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
My instinct is, I'm sorry.
A lot of people need to hear that.
I'm sorry. I did not know. I knew not what I was doing. I'll do better. I'll fix it all.
It reminds me of the metta meditation. I love you. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Or not necessarily in that order, but yeah. So a lot of people, when you do that and you focus it out at a stranger, it's actually in our bonus section of this workshop. It's so healing to send that out energetically because so many people just need that to hear. I'm sorry. Yeah. So I know we normally ask, where can people find you online? But I know that you do so much work in the world. You have Do Contra Ventures, you have Lonely Whale. Where can people find that work, and how can they get involved?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I actually, you could just Google me, you could find me online there, but really proud of Do Contra Ventures. We're building an impact fund that seeks YBM, which is yield beyond money. We want to reestablish our relationship, or the appropriate relationship to money as a tool, not as a goal. And so we're investing in awesome companies, and also in tools of personal transformation, as well as trying to shift our financial systems as well. So check that out. I mean, go to docontra.ventures or at docontra.ventures.
Awesome.
Amazing. So I'm going to open up the Q&A. You ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So
first off, let's see who we got.
Because you're recording it for the podcast, it's in panel mode.
Yeah, and I'll just read them to you guys because I know you're a
so.
little further from the computer, so you can't get to them as easily, Jade. All right, so this one says, how did you recognize you were in your feminine too much? And how did you begin to trust your masculine more?
That's a good question.
So I had been doing a lot of work. We've established that. A lot of breath work as well. And I was in Australia, and I was doing this shamanic breath work in which I would descend through my lineage, energetic lineage, ancestral lineage. And so in that state, in that meditative state of the breath work, I was able to pass through my mother, my mother's mother, my great-grandmother, my Native American ancestry, into the earth and the animals. And I bawled and I cried and I cried. I was just purging the pain, the traumas of my ancestors. And when I came out, sort of in the download, I recognized that I was connected to my female lineage, my ancestors, my female ancestors, and even the earth and the animals, like feminine, and not the masculine. It was there. I felt it energetically near, but I couldn't tap into it. And so when talking to the facilitator, she's like, yeah, you're very feminine. You have like a lot of feminine energy passing through you. And I recognized that for whatever reasons, growing up, not having that strong masculine role model, having a father who left me, having men who taught me how to womanize or be macho, some sort of semblance of masculinity, or were inappropriate with me sexually. Like I had a lot of dark, negative masculine modeling, and ultimately not developed as in the masculine. But my feminine was quite strong, and feminine being the creative, the potential, being the infinite possibilities of life itself. I recognized that I was using that, I was tapping into that for my art, for my creativity as an actor, as a musician, as a filmmaker. And I was very, very connected into being able to dip into the chaos, into the unknown, and then like sort of manifest stuff creatively. And this is maybe a longer answer. My immature masculine, my little boy, of course, wanted to be powerful, wanted to be strong and protect myself in the world. And so when I got offered roles in Hollywood, that was my way, my little boy immature way to exploit my feminine for money, power, fame, and security, and to feel like the man. And I realized in that moment that I'd been essentially prostituting my feminine for my whole adult career.
Wow.
In order to make myself feel like the man. And I realized, fuck, like I need to grow up. I need to be a strong adult, divine masculine, not only to protect the world, but to protect myself from myself. So
that's some extreme self-awareness and introspection.
And also these are all just stories that we're telling ourselves, right?
Yeah.
I resonated with that story. It became clear to me that through line, that narrative through line, and it feels true to me. And so I was like, oh, okay. So now I'm going to stop exploiting myself. I'm going to stop doing things just for the money, just for the power, just for the fame. And I'm going to do things that are deeply aligned with my higher self. And
that's you cultivating that divine masculine, figuring out how to stay on direction, keep the structure of where you actually want to go.
Right. Because my default was the feminine.
Yeah.
Like, let me just use this feminine, like shape-shifting quality to gain all the things out in the world and exploit that, as opposed to, no, let me step into my masculine and make decisions about what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do, and take the risk to be better. And the whole world, our economic system is designed to seek and exploit the parts of us that are willing to be exploited. Those
open, fluid characteristics of creativity, which are so beautiful and important to hone. And like anyone listening to this, especially men who are hearing this and like, we think about not wanting to be in our feminine. Luckily, our last call with the men on this call from Awakening the King Within was largely about determining where you're in your feminine and where you're in your masculine, and how to be energetically agile between those two things. But it's really beautiful to hear from you, Adrian, how you were able to kind of notice where you were too deeply in your feminine, or in other words, exploiting it in some degrees. And the fact that you were able to recognize that is so huge. And I think when we get to that place, so much incredible growth and healing happens. And that's when the masculine comes in, masculine representing consciousness as well. Masculine is the one that's able to become aware of that happening in the first place, and then can create the structure needed in order to channel us to where we're actually trying to go, instead of us just being, floating around the clouds in our feminine state all the time.
Yeah, I'm not trying to reduce my feminine or like put it. I appreciate it, and I want to protect it, and I want to use it for the highest good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So beautiful. And as you began answering that question, you talked about you were doing that breath work that was really helping you transcend and look at your lineage, and how you kind of, your feminine lineage, especially like where those energies came from for you. And that we have a question here about really where your original spiritual work was born, like how you became versed in spiritual work in the first place. And I've heard other interviews of you where you talk about your upbringing and your mother. And so maybe you can just address this question. It's, how were you first introduced to the spiritual work you are so versed in now?
Well, when I was younger, my mom was always open to different religions or different spiritual philosophies. She was an astrologer for a time. We spent some time in an ashram, probably six to 8 months. She was a flower child. And so I was exposed to a lot of different philosophies and ideologies. And then I got into different books, I had this fantasy that I was going to bend spoons with my mind. I was very much into the thing like magic and that sort of thing. And then meditation, curious about Buddhism, really responded well to Buddhist philosophy. And then at a certain point in my early 20s, I abandoned all spiritual pursuit for the indulgences of the flesh. And I excelled at that. And it was great. Until now, of course, I have come back full circle to go back to where I veered off the path. So yeah.
Yeah, that does definitely answer that. We're so glad though that you went through all the things, even if they were hard or not necessarily the healthiest, because they got you to here. So we're grateful.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad I survived it.
Yeah, I'm glad you survived it. Exactly. So we have a question from Mike Summers here. He says, Mercedes and Jade have talked a bit about allowing your queen to become your oracle. I think you mentioned that today too, to some degree, Adrian. And he says, with your current partner, as opposed to your previous relationships, was there any singular moment when you realized you could trust her with this role in your life? Or was this a gradual realization? And he says, can you describe this realization from your own perspective?
The masculine is about discerning choice making, to be able to choose. Feminine is anything and everything and all the things. And then the man says, no, this is it. So in order to bring all that potential into being, the masculine has to choose. Mm. And that is your opportunity to make that choice. So you get to choose who your partner is. You get to choose you. You're the one. And I'm giving myself to you, knowing that nobody's perfect, knowing that no one is going to be, you're not looking to mommy to take care of you. You're looking to a woman to serve. Mm. So once you make that choice, it becomes true, and it'll be hard, and no relationship's going to be perfect, and there's going to be shadow in her and mistrust, and she may disappoint you. She may hurt you. That may happen. But the importance is not who you choose, but to choose.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the resistance that may come from that specific situation is the feeling of she's trying to change me. Like she doesn't love me for who I already am. But it's that realization of she loves me so much that she wants me to be my highest self, and to let go of that perspective of she's trying to change me, and allow her to be the voice of God in your life, because the feminine is intuition, and she can feel when you're off course.
Yeah, and it's a dance, so the analogy that I like, I was like, and I don't know if this is relevant, we'll make it relevant. I was like a sail on a ship, and it was flapping around in the wind, and the feminine energy, the women were like just blowing through me, and I was just randomly going in any direction. But it wasn't until I pulled back on the ropes and I made that sail taut, just firm enough that I was able to harness the energy of that woman and then go somewhere, have a direction.
I love that analogy.
So it's not that, they may want to change you. And I think you take a look at what they're, what's being offered, but ultimately stand firm. And if you know where you stand is appropriate, or where you're embodying your highest self, you don't have to change. But if you're not going to change, you don't need to be thrown off. If a woman's making a suggestion, you can just sit in it and let them relax. Because a lot of times we want to react,
Right.
We don't like a man just wants things to be done. So we want to try and fix it. But sometimes you just have to sit and let the wind blow you and hold the wind.
I love that. Hold the wind, fellas. All right. So what methods did you use to limit your escapisms and to become more sensitive to feeling your body? So I think he wants tangible, like any methods that come to mind. I know you talked about breath work a little bit.
Yeah. Meditation. I mean, breath work, but just breath work in every moment. I don't think I was paying attention to my breath until you just said so. Yeah.
We often just hold our breath all the time.
Yeah. So
We're not breathing into our belly.
How much throughout the day can you bring some awareness to your breath? Of course. But meditation also is great because you start to, move your awareness, move your mind, your consciousness around the different places in your body. And you suddenly, like, if you focus enough, you'll be able to feel like the sensations on the tip of your finger or on your elbow or a small point on your back. And so it is about being able to pass your awareness into your body in different places and get and feel into those sensations. Those are, yeah.
Those are great. Yeah, those are
great. And then also, recognizing, so sex is like drugs. It's a powerful, powerful medicine that can become addictive because it's so much that it's not subtle at times, so if you reduce the amount of drugs you take, you start to be able to feel more of the subtlety.
Yeah, and that goes for masturbation as well. When you're releasing those chemicals, whatever way you get there, that is creating a pseudo addiction or sometimes a severe addiction. So it is something to definitely look at what your relationship to it is.
And your tolerance grows. So then you have to increase the dose. But if you reduce your tolerance, suddenly you're feeling every little bit, every little thing.
Hypersensitive. Yeah. And that is where a lot of the deliciousness that can come with that comes from, is that being able to be sensitive. All right. So we have one from Denny, and I'm going to just speak this one out loud and see what we can pull from it exactly. I'm not exactly sure what he's asking. Okay. You talked about your level of intuition and how the multiple levels of awareness were needed to extract your decisions. Did you find or extract shame from it, or was it from a place of guilt for past transgressions, past trespasses? So I think he's asking, when you became aware about your needing to communicate with your inner intuition in order to make decisions from an integral place, did you extract any shame or guilt? And were those, did you notice that was coming from past transgression? I'm not sure how those two things relate, but does something come up for you there?
I don't know if I find guilt to be a very useful emotion.
Because it's like shame.
Yeah, it's a shame, right? And there's something disempowering about it. It's where you feel guilty, there's nothing you can do. And I don't know if I'm able to answer the question, because I don't know if
let me see if I can. So, okay. First I want to just say, and this is going to be a little bit of a pushback, but just because we just had our call and we described the difference between shame and guilt, as described actually from Mary Margrave, our intuitive, that shame is this, essentially the idea that we are somehow bad innately. When we feel shame, we actually feel that we are bad. And then when we feel guilt, or if we can differentiate the two, guilt is actually, I did something bad. And there it makes it revocable. It makes it something you can repair. You can go back and say, I'm sorry, or I fucked up, or let me change my actions in the future and not do that thing again. So let's see, with Denny asking this question, he's asking specifically about your ability to be intuitive, and then you have an awareness of how intuition is needed in order to create decision or be decisive. And then if any of these places that you may have felt guilt or shame come up in your life were, I think, dictating where you were going. And if you said, hey, let me throw that out the window because it's bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So this is about time and space for me, right? So when you feel guilty, it's because you did something in the past bad. And you're like, damn, now that you can't change it. Intuition is being able to expand your awareness into future moments or into other people's experiences outside of yourself, so that you can feel what, might happen if you do something, so that you can make a better choice or make a different choice. So guilt is the experience of having done something, and intuition is like, I now can avoid having to be guilty because I feel that what I'm doing right now will lead me to a place where I might feel guilty about it. Whereas before, when I wasn't feeling, I would just do the thing. It would be terrible, destructive, whatever, and I wouldn't even feel bad because I wouldn't feel anything.
Yeah.
So it was just, like bulldozing through a forest and tearing down all the trees and all that stuff. So it's like, yeah.
I think so. So coming from, now that you can come from a place because you've tapped into your body and you've tapped into, its intelligence that also, flows through us, all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you've tapped into intuition in order to help you make your decisions, you're not having to sort through shame and guilt in the same level as you might have allowed those things to direct your life for a long part of your life.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
That's what she said.
I think we got there together, y'all. All right. So let's see here. Ryan is asking, what's the number one resource you would recommend for men trying to enter into their king, as we call it here, or integrated self?
Yeah, I really do believe men need other men. We raise each other up, and especially the lack of masculine role models for generations, perhaps.
We've lost the initiations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we're stumbling through it together, but we will do it together. So in many ways, I've had to raise myself. I've had to, from a place of unknowing, had to conjure and create those rites of passage for myself. And then now with other men, we do it for each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So find men that you respect, that by how they show up, by how they express themselves, are looking to create to serve the world and make a better world, and get with them. And those kinds of people will embrace you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes it seems like a big task. And the next question that's being asked here is, how do you recommend building up the courage to join a men's group? And is there a place I can start?
Yeah. And it's hard. It is hard. When I first joined my men's group, I kept wanting to stay quiet or not contribute. And I was embarrassed and shy and scared, and not having grown up with brothers or sisters. And I was always afraid, and like being raised by a single mom, I was afraid of male attention because it was often aggressive. I didn't have the horseplay. So to be with other men that are like strong and powerful is intimidating. And I know that personally. So it can be, but stick with it and know, as we were talking about before, they need you to show up. We need you. We need you to show up. So please.
I love that. And Jade, I believe we have on our resource list in Awakening the King Within, some men's groups that we believe deeply in, because either our partners are in them, or we have talked to the men or know the men well who guide the course or guide the men's workshops. So there are, as soon as you open yourself to this,
less threatening, you can do an online one where they meet on Zoom, like Connor Beaton's, or
at least to start. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I would just say that there's nothing more brave than being vulnerable. Like if you can truly be vulnerable and be seen in your weakness, and we all have that, right? that gives not only, it's a relief to allow yourself to be vulnerable, but also it gives the other men an opportunity to show up. And we all want to feel like we have value to add in the world. We want to be of service. That's where like our true sense of purpose comes from. So when you are vulnerable and you allow other men to hold you and to show up for you, you're doing them a favor also. So it's a mutual benefit.
Absolutely. So beautiful. And it is the way that you as a man can be a light in the world of other people.
And you'll do it for others.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, whatever you need in order to motivate yourself, but that's such a huge motivator. Like, hey, I'm actually helping others by showing up in this workshop, in this men's group, and speaking my truth and being vulnerable. Sometimes we need to do it for others before we can love ourselves enough to do it for ourselves. So I love that you are being such a beautiful example of this too. And I'm so thankful you have decided to come on our show. I know this has been in the making for so long, and it's like kind of, the universe is designed to have you here right in the middle of our men's workshop, because this is what we wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adrian, for being a light.
Thank you. Yeah. Long time coming. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm so proud of the man that you've become. And I'm so thankful for everything that you're doing, and so thankful for you said it yourself, like it takes bravery. I'm so thankful for your bravery. Yeah.
Can we have lunch?
Yeah.
We're going to have lunch, catch up.
We're going to go eat pizza at a kid's birthday party.
Amazing. All right, guys. So if you've been watching this, thank you so much for joining us. And you know that our next call is coming up on Tuesday. That'll be at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we'll send you a Zoom link out that you can catch in your email, of course. And then anyone listening on the Magic Hour podcast, you know what to do. We only grow by you guys giving us those ratings and reviews. It lights up our life whenever we see one come through. So please rate us 5 stars and send us a review. That's how Apple Podcasts puts us out on the world, gives us some reach. So love you guys. Thank you for being here. And you can catch another one of our episodes in our podcast library now. Otherwise, we release one every Monday. All right, guys, we will catch you next Monday. Until then,
be a light. All right.
Yeah.